Metal Gear Solid Delta is coming, and if you've heard me or anyone else talk about Metal Gear games, you know they can be absolutely bonkers. Fun, but bonkers. And if you're thinking about trying out this remake and experiencing the franchise for the first time, I've created this video to catch you up on everything you need to know so you can play. This is Metal Gear Solid lore for beginners. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, which we'll call Delta for short, is actually the 5th title in the Hideo Kojima series and remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. And on that alone, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but let's start with the most important one. What is Metal Gear? Metal Gear is a series of action-adventure stealth games where you play as the box-hiding, cigarette-smoking, battle-hardened special ops agent, Snake. And if you recognize Snake, you might have seen him in some other games, notably Smash Bros. And of course, Fortnite. But for Kojima fans, Snake is known for being the series' main protagonist, stemming from Metal Gear for the NES. Snake's job is to infiltrate enemy bases, take on wild Kojima bosses, and deal with any of the titular Metal Gears, which are giant robots that are basically walking nukes. It's bad news. We're talking if they fall into the hands of the wrong people, it's over for all of us kind of bad news. The next question on your mind is probably, why are we starting with Delta as a remake instead of any of the games that came before it? Well, hopefully I can explain without giving too much of the Delta plot away. Metal Gear, the first game, takes place in the distant, fictional future of 1995. Look, the game came out in 87, so just accept this is what we're doing. In this alternative timeline where the Cold War continues, Special Forces Unit Foxhound has been tasked with covert, solo infiltrations into unauthorized combat zones that may be too politically sensitive to deploy the military or political agents to. Again, for those of you who don't really know that much about the real Cold War, it was a time when the US and Russia were basically just trying to outdo each other without straight up waging direct war for the small fear of, nuclear annihilation. So things like covert ops and spies were definitely a big feature of the time period. The first game begins with the US government receiving some sort of intel regarding a potential new weapon of mass destruction being made in South Africa. So the CIA uses Special Force Unit Foxhound to infiltrate, assess, and potentially neutralize the threat. Led by their storied soldier and commander, codenamed Big Boss, agents are selected and dispatched to deal with the threat. Foxhound's newest recruit, Solid Snake, is sent into the South African fortified state of Outer Heaven after the previous agent goes missing. You see, Gray Fox, the agent who goes missing, was Big Boss's most loyal soldier and was sent into Outer Heaven before Snake, where his mission was to gather data on the fortress and any information regarding the secret weapon that was being developed there. The last communication they received from him, of course, was the phrase, Metal Gear. As Snake makes his way through the fortress, he manages to locate and rescue Gray Fox, who informs him of the Metal Gear and what it is and how it needs to be destroyed, which prompts Snake to delve deeper into the fortress in hopes of putting stop to its production. As Snake successfully makes his way through the facility, he locates and eventually destroys Metal Gear before it's completed. But plot twist! When he confronts the leader and founder of Outer Heaven, it turns out to be none other than Big Boss. Though it's unclear if Gray Fox had any knowledge of Big Boss's plans prior to Snake's mission, Big Boss had knowingly sent Snake in and fed him misinformation throughout the game in order to keep the secrets of Outer Heaven away from the world's governments. He wanted Snake to fail, but ended up underestimating his abilities. Thankfully, Snake was there to stop him, and the game concludes with Big Boss activating a self-destruct sequence that destroys the compound with him and Snake in it. Snake eventually ends up beating Big Boss as Outer Heaven crumbles to the ground. So who is Big Boss? His goal in the creation of Outer Heaven was to end abuse and exploitation of soldiers by the world's governments. He just went about it in the most crazy way possible. So let's move on to Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. This game takes place in 1999 and deals with the fallout of the previous game. Solid Snake has gone into retirement after years of service, and the world's oil reserves are dwindling as soldiers from Zanzibar land plan to control the world's oil supply through a new process called Oil-X, created by Czech scientist Dr. Kio Marv. Now, for those of you wondering, yes, Zanzibar is a real place. It exists off the coast of Tanzania in Africa, but Zanzibar land, which in this story is located somewhere between Pakistan and Tajikistan, I think, like right in there. Anyway, in this sequel, we see the return of Foxhound, but this time with their new commander, Roy Campbell, who becomes a series regular and acts as the main point of contact for Solid Snake. Roy pulls Snake out of retirement and tasks him with the mission of infiltrating Zanzibar land, but while on mission, Snake discovers that a new Metal Gear is being developed by the same scientist that was used to develop the original one, Dr. Drago Petrovich Madnar, and when he meets Snake, we learn that the leader of Zanzibar land is, in fact, Big Boss. That's right, somehow Big Boss returned. Snake eventually finds Dr. Marv's cell, but inside is only a corpse. Marv was killed by Madnar, who's been working with Zanzibar the entire time, and you guessed it, has already built another Metal Gear. Thankfully, this time, Snake has some more help in the form of anonymous radio messages, offering you tips, navigation of the facility, and the location of traps and obstacles. With this mysterious benefactor's help, Snake manages to find and stop Dr. Madnar, only to come face to face with the newest Metal Gear. Plot twist! It's revealed the pilot and person inside has been helping Snake the entire time, and it is, in fact, his former teammate, Gray Fox. Following his rescue from the first game, Gray Fox continued to support his friend Big Boss and helped create Zanzibar Land. But he was conflicted with the boss's plans, because they seem a little drastic, and he tried to help Snake the best he could, as a thank you for the first game. But he begs Snake now to turn around and not pursue the big boss. But we're the hero, and we can't, so the two come to blows. Defeating the Metal Gear, Snake and Gray Fox battle in the coolest way possible, hand-to-hand combat in a minefield. Why? 'Cause that's badass. With Gray Fox defeated, Solid Snake confronts Big Boss with nothing more than a makeshift flamethrower, 'cause he cool like that, and saves the world once again. He barely managed to escape Zanzibar land, delivering the Oilix formula to Colonel Campbell. The next game in the series is one that I think most of you are familiar with, if only for the meme-worthiness of it, and that's Metal Gear Solid, released on PS1. This story begins all the way in the year 2005, in a time where we really thought the future was going to be awesome. A group of renegade, genetically enhanced ex-Special Forces operatives, who call themselves Foxhound, by the way, that's right, the same Foxhound as before, seize control of an Alaskan island codenamed Shadow Moses. Now, before the events of the game, Roy disbanded Foxhound after the death of Big Boss, but they're back, baby!
Here's Foxhound.
Interestingly, this iteration of the group is led by a man named Liquid Snake, and all the members have undergone genetic manipulation to enhance their combat capabilities. This is the future, after all. And you may be wondering, why take over an Alaskan island? Well, it's because it's also a nuclear weapons disposal facility, and you know what you can do with that stuff? Make a Metal Gear.
They're demanding that the government turn over the remains of Big Boss, and they say that if their demands are not met within 24 hours, they'll launch a nuclear weapon.
So, like with all renegade groups, if their demands aren't met, Foxhound will unleash the Metal Gear on the world. Their demands, of course, are classic, give us money, and give us Big Boss's remains. And again, to be clear, I think a lot of you right now are thinking, Jesse, this sounds a lot like the movie The Rock, and that's because I am convinced The Rock inspired Kojima. It's sort of a Kojima, Jerry Bruckheimer, Ouroboros. Anyway, once again, Colonel Campbell pulls Solid Snake out of retirement, because this man can't catch a break, and tasks him with infiltrating Shadow Moses to put a stop to his old team and to rescue 3 prisoners held within the base. DARPA Chief Donald Anderson, Colonel Campbell's niece, Meryl Silverberg, and President of ArmsTech, Kenneth Baker. As Snake stealths his way through the compound, he eventually comes across Donald Anderson's cell, but before Snake can even attempt to rescue him, he falls dead of a heart attack, but not before telling him where Baker's being held. And where he's being held is a pillar in the middle of a room surrounded by tripwire and explosives, and it's basically a Saw movie up in there. As Snake attempts a rescue, he's confronted by Liquid's right-hand man, and honestly one of the coolest villains in the game, Revolver Ocelot. The two get into a heated gunfight, bullets are ricocheting off walls, it is very cool. But the fight is interrupted by a cyborg ninja decked out in an exoskeleton suit, and he cuts off the right arm of Ocelot before retreating back into the shadows. Kojima, baby. You manage to free Baker, and just as he begins to spill government secrets, much like Anderson, he too dies of a heart attack. But thankfully, he manages to give Snake a codec code to contact Meryl, who will give him a keycard that can then help him deactivate the Metal Gear. Meryl agrees to help Snake on the condition that he meets Dr. Hal Emmerich, known to the series as Otacon. And hilariously, like Kojima's known to do, it's just a combination of two things he loves: Roland Emmerich, the guy behind things like Independence Day and Day After Tomorrow, and Hal, the AI from 2001 Space Odyssey. But upon meeting Otacon, Snake is once again confronted by the cyborg ninja, and it is revealed to be Snake's long-believed dead friend, Gray Fox. That's right, the man somehow survived the events of not just Zanzibar Land, but experimentation and modification that was done to him, putting him in this exoskeleton suit, saving his life, but clearly driving him insane. Although Gray Fox won't be the only trouble that Snake encounters when he's on Shadow Moses. Just like in the past, there's a whole rogues gallery, except this time these are the ones that I think Metal Gear is really known for. Obviously, we have to start with Revolver Ocelot, who Snake met earlier, basically the Ricochet genius. He's armed with a pair of revolvers and a former confidant of Big Boss. He's the one who urged Liquid Snake to take over the mantle as head of Foxhound. Psycho Mantis, who's probably the most famous one, uses psychokinesis and telepathy during the battle, but also is known for making you switch your controllers from different ports to beat him. Very cool stuff. Sniper Wolf is a total badass who is the world's greatest sniper. Vulcan Raven is an Alaskan shaman who, for some reason, carries around a machine gun because that's pretty cool. And Decoy Octopus is a master of impersonations and mimicry, an expert, as we find out, in impersonating Donald Anderson during the rescue mission. Finally, our hero comes face to face with Liquid Snake, who is preparing to launch the Metal Gear. But there's one last plot twist to be revealed. You see, years ago, the CIA began a project called Les Enfants Terribles, a cloning experiment based off Big Boss. Liquid Snake is a clone of Big Boss. And to make things more complicated, so are you. Both Solid and Liquid Snake are twin brothers born of Big Boss's DNA. Liquid reveals that Solid was sent by the government not just to stop the Metal Gear, but to wipe out Foxhound once and for all. You see, little does our hero know that he has been injected with a virus known as Fox Die. It causes cardiac arrest to specific people who come in contact with Solid Snake based on their DNA, which is why all those people just keeled over and died when you saved them. The government straight up lied to Solid and then planned to recover the Metal Gear after all those present died to the virus, including Solid Snake. And although he was betrayed by his government, the man still had a job, and so he takes on Liquid Snake and the Metal Gear, with the help, of course, of your on-again, off-again bud, Gray Fox, who is promptly crushed by said Metal Gear. Liquid thinks he's got a good shot at you, tries to take it, but right as he's about to, he too succumbs to the virus, and it kills him before he can kill you. The game ends with Snake, who is rapidly aging now because of Fox Die, riding off to live the rest of his life before it will eventually kill him. And Colonel Campbell declares him dead in order to stop the government from pursuing him. The last and final game on our lore list to prep you for Delta is the follow-up sequel to Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Taking place 4 years after the Shadow Moses incident in the distant future of 2009, the story begins with a major oil spill off the coast of New York, which forces the government to build an environmental cleanup facility called the Big Shell. But then United States President James Johnson is taken hostage by a new terrorist organization called the Sons of Liberty, who threaten to blow up the structure unless they receive $30 billion. The twist here is that the new terrorist organization is allegedly led by Solid Snake, who has gathered a team of his own wacky enhanced villains. You know, we're talking classic bomb guy, really lucky girl, and of course, a vampire. The game also sees the return of Revolver Ocelot, who in the prologue reveals that he has had Liquid Snake's arm grafted onto him to replace the arm that got cut off by Gray Fox in the previous game. He's also undergone some sort of future brain tech transfer to combine his personality with that of Liquid Snake. And if you're asking, how? It's Kojima, man. I don't know. How does anything happen with him? The story this time around, however, follows a totally new character, Raiden, who is sent to save the president and stop the Sons of Liberty. And this is about where things go completely off the rails in the most Kojima way possible, so hold on to your butts. You see, Raiden discovers that Big Shell was actually created to hide something called Arsenal Gear, which isn't really a Metal Gear, but something way worse, a submersible fortress housing an AI called GW, or George Washington, created by a secret group called the Patriots. And its purpose is to control the flow of digital information to the US, and also have complete control over the 4 branches of the military. President Johnson explains that the leader of the Patriots is in fact the previous president of the United States, George Sears. But we're not out of Crazy Town yet, because Sears is in fact another Big Boss clone, codenamed Solidus Snake. So, to be clear, we have Solid Snake, Liquid Snake, Solidus Snake, and...
This is Snake. I'm now inside Strut A of Shell 1.
For a short while at the beginning of this, Raiden is called Snake in-game. And it's revealed that Raiden was raised by Solidus after he killed Raiden's parents.
By the way, Jack, I was the one who killed your parents.
And then trained him from an early age to be a murder machine. So if the villain is another clone, I hear you asking, well then where's Solid Snake? Good news, friends, he's been under our nose the entire time. Raiden was sent on this mission with SEAL Team 10, and one of the members, Iroquois Pliskin, is actually Solid Snake in disguise. This being another one of Kojima's I Like Snake Plissken from John Carpenter's Escape from New York, so this is a funny way of hiding him from the players. And I want to say to you, now we finally jump back on the train tracks, but my friends, we are so far off them, we are flying away like the end of Back to the Future 3. But I will try to wrap up the plot best I can. When Snake and Raiden are eventually captured by Solidus and Ocelot, it's revealed that Ocelot has been with the Patriot Agency the entire time, and this was all orchestrated by the Patriots in order to artificially recreate a soldier that is as badass as Solid Snake. Ocelot then gets entirely possessed by Liquid Snake because of the arm, and then proclaims that he is planning to hunt down the Patriots using Ocelot's knowledge with a new stolen Metal Gear, but that's not all. As Arsenal Gear crashes into Manhattan, an AI-constructed Colonel Campbell contacts Raiden to explain the real reason it exists. The AI is interested in controlling not just all of digital information, but all of human thought. The game concludes with Raiden striking down Solidus, and Solid Snake and Otacon planning to go after Liquid Ocelot and the Patriots.
Snake, you there? It's me. I've finished going over that disc.
Did you find the Patriots list?
Of course. They're already dead. All 12 of them.
When did it happen?
Well, about 100 years ago.
What the hell?
So yeah, the game puts Solid Snake in the backseat and focuses on Raiden, and at the time, fans were not too pleased to be playing someone else, even if that someone else eventually goes on to be in the incredibly kick-ass Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. I cannot recommend that game enough. But really, in the end, it's about Snake, and the snakes, and clones, and all that stuff, so before we continue the chase of Liquid Ocelot, the franchise takes another wild turn, and we travel back in time to get some much-needed backstory. And that is where Delta comes in. As I mentioned before, Delta is a remake of the original Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater for the PS2, and as far as we know, it'll follow the same story, Obviously, I don't want to spoil too much as this is prep for your enjoyment of the game, so I don't want to ruin that experience. But the information I can give you is that the main character of Metal Gear Solid 3, or Delta, is Naked Snake, who in 1964 is sent by Lyndon B. Johnson, a real-ass president we had, unlike James Johnson, who I'm pretty sure is just one of those names selected from the old Japanese baseball games they used to have that had kind of vaguely American-sounding names. Anyway, during this time, it's the height of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall has been erected, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought us all to the brink, and tensions are running very high between the US and the Soviet Union. Naked Snake's adventure takes place during this time where there's an abundance of nukes and they're being made more frequently by Russia and the US, who are just trying to outdo each other. As Naked Snake, a member of the CIA Special Forces unit named Fox, you are tasked with infiltrating a secret Russian facility located deep within the Soviet jungle? You know, the well-known Soviet jungles. His mission is to rescue a defecting Russian rocket scientist named Nikolai Sokolov with the hopes of putting a stop to the construction of a Metal Gear. And like all the games, you can expect twists and turns and some fun reveals, which again, I will not spoil for you. And there may even be some things that are unexpected. This is a remake after all, and it's kind of out of Kojima's hands, so who knows what they're going to add. But it is safe to say that we'll see the return of David Hayter as Snake and the world's longest ladder. And it looks like Snake's adventure in Delta could possibly be the perfect way to set you up for the franchise, take you down the road of discovery to learn the origins of Kojima's decade-long tale, and set the stage for future games to come. Now, obviously, we left out a lot, but these games are wacky good fun, and the more I tell you, the more you'll just be confused. I'm talking fire whale here, people. It gets wild. So just know I gave you enough backstory that if you have questions, you can look it up yourself, or if you don't want to be spoiled, you don't have to. And you can give the game a shot when it releases. Special thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/JesseCox who helps make videos like this and all the other ones we do possible. Thank you. It's because of you we get to do all sorts of fun stuff. And we'll see you next time for more Lore for Beginners.